Explain to me what the fuck NFTs are, why this artist can sell them for $69 million. Beeple, I think, sold for $69 million. A buddy of ours, Logan Paul, put out these fucking Pokemon cards of himself. He made a few $1 million. What is happening? What is an NFT? What is happening? And how long does this NFT bubble exist?
So fungibility, again, just some fucking fancy world somebody made up, right? Yeah. But basically fungibility means if I take that $100 and I put it in a pile with 10 other $100 bills and we mix them all up and I just grab $100 back, it doesn't matter if I got the one I put in or I got, a different one. I got still $100. I can use it at the store, whatever. If I have art though, and I have a Picasso and I put it in a pile with 3 fake Picassos and we mix them all up and I go to grab a Picasso, if I don't grab the original, I'm screwed. Mm-hmm. So when the dollars all can get mixed up and I can take whatever back, that's called something that's fungible. It doesn't matter which one you have. As long as you have a $100 bill, you got a $100 bill as long as it's real, right? With the art, you need something that's non-fungible, meaning if you don't have the original, then you got a fraud and it's not. It doesn't have any of its value. So what ends up happening with Bitcoin is fungible, right? If I have a Bitcoin and you have a Bitcoin and we basically send them back and forth a bunch of times and we don't know, do I have my original one or your original one? Doesn't matter. I got a Bitcoin, you got a Bitcoin, we're good. What people started to realize was, wait a second, a blockchain, a key piece to it is, remember when we talked about the blocks of transactions? Yeah. It's immutable. All that means is no one can change it. So once it gets stamped on the blockchain, nobody can change it. Yeah. So you can imagine all kinds of crazy stuff. So early on, somebody on Ethereum said, yo, in China, they don't want to let me say something. You know what? I'm going to write it to the blockchain because the Chinese government can't take it down. Oh, okay. That's interesting, right? So wait a minute, you mean you can't censor an immutable thing? So that was a pretty aggressive use of it. People started to say, well, where else is non-fungibility important? So anything that's scarce. Go back to that piece of music. If you can copy music over and over and over again, then basically there's no scarcity to it, right? Art, the whole value of art is scarcity. Yep. So you can think of it 2 ways, and I forget who wrote this, so I apologize, I'm not gonna give them credit for it, but basically you can think of it like a serial number. So if I said to you, the example that I was reading about is somebody said, think of it like the Eiffel Tower. Yeah. Eiffel Tower 001 is the real valuable one. But every copy, no matter how big it is, how small it is, where it is, if it's in Vegas, if it's Eiffel Tower number 47036,
it could be
no
made
value.
The exact same way.
Exactly, no value.
If it's not in Paris,
if it's not
no value.
Serial number 1,
yes,
no value. So what ends up happening is in a digital world, this shit's hard. It's hard to rebuild the Eiffel Tower. It's hard to put it in a different place. And people are like, oh, that's the original, right? It's a physical world. In the digital world, it's much easier to do this stuff. So when you basically stamp it onto a blockchain and you say, this is serial number 1 of this item, everyone can see it. And then everyone can see who's owned it. So let's say you create a piece of art and then you send it here, 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 here. Yeah. And now the next person wants to come buy it. They can come see, did Andrew create this or not? Who else owned it? When did they own it? What did they pay for it? All this stuff.
Here's my question about that, especially with art. With a piece of art, right? Maybe now with 3D printing or something like that, it's possible. But up until maybe the last decade, it was impossible to recreate a piece of art in the exact same way, especially if it was like an oil painting, right? There's certain 3D textures to oil. So even if you were an amazing forger and you recreated some Van Gogh, it's not going to be exactly the same. Maybe the colors are similar, but it's not the exact same, right? Yep. So you know what's different. With a piece of digital art, a simple screenshot could recreate the exact same image. Why is it that people care about having the original thing when
it's not the original?
No. Why do they care about having the original one when the copy is exactly the same?
Because the people aren't buying art because of what it looks like. They're buying the story.
Yeah, that's what I have to wrap my head around.
They're buying the value, right? Yeah. If I paint the same thing as Van Gogh, it's not because of what it looks like.
You're right.
They're buying Van Gogh. They're buying the story.
So what you said about the Eiffel Tower kind of made it click for me, because you could recreate the Eiffel Tower and it has negative value. You're like, what do I do with this? This is a waste of space.
It takes up too much room in the garage.
It's too much, yeah. So, but the fact that there's this story built around the Eiffel Tower in Paris, you're purchasing that story. I get that, right?
So when
a brand new piece of art that just came out has no story besides you, maybe the artist.
So I'll explain. You use this artist I've partnered with called Rakodi, right? So Rakodi basically said, all right, I'm going to create art And what I'm going to do is I want to democratize access to this. So think of like Christie's or Sotheby's or whoever says, yo, if you're rich, you can come, you could buy this.
Auction houses to anybody who's listening.
Super expensive art, right? And it's kind of gated. You got to verify yourself, got to do all this stuff. Rakoti said, all right, I'm going to create this really dope art. I've got 12 pieces.
Yep.
I'm going to sell it on the internet. Anyone with the internet connection anywhere in the world can now come in and can buy this.
Yep.
And this artist said, I'm going to sell it for 0.01 ETH, right? Which is basically like $18, $19 at the time. And they sold this direct, sold out in 26 seconds.
ETH is short for Ethereum.
Yep.
Blah, blah. Yep.
And so basically they promoted it on Twitter, blah, blah, whatever, right? All this stuff. Then they say, you know what? We have 3 other pieces and we're going to auction them. So just like these auction houses do, we're just going to auction them to the internet. Mm-hmm. And when they auctioned it, it was, here's the piece. Anyone in the world over the next 24, 12 hours, whatever it was, could come in and let the market decide what it's worth. Sold the first one for 40,000, the next one for 70, the next one for like 40,000 again. And the reason why that's important is what those people are buying is that Rakoti created it. You can see in the transaction history that Rakoti's the one who minted this onto the blockchain. And then from there, what happens is you can literally not only see every single transaction, but also in some of these platforms, you can see every bid. So I can see that you actually bid 100K and then you got scared and you took away the bid. Then I can see that he bid $2 like a cheapskate, right?
Exactly. All this is accurate.
And then he basically was like, nah, you know what? Like, I don't want this, right? So you can see all this history. What it does is it provides transparency. And that's ultimately what's happening around the world, whether it's blockchain, crypto, Bitcoin stuff, or it's just frankly society in general, is people are calling bullshit on the world. They're saying, I don't believe you. I don't believe the politicians. I don't believe the central bank. I don't believe the media. I don't believe anybody.
But I believe blockchain.
Verify it. Prove it to me. If you prove it to me, then I'll trust it.
So do you think on some level, crypto is a reaction to a lack of trust in everything? Do you think people are seeking, you know how like girls with daddy issues, like, right? Like they might seek out a certain type of dude, right? Like, do we have daddy issues with the government, with politicians, do we have daddy issues with the powers that be, the elites, and we're seeking something that is out of their control to find comfort in?
The world historically has been a narrative-driven value chain. What I mean by that is gold. The reason why gold is valuable is because somebody told you it was. You can't tell me.
I give a little pushback on that.
All right, go ahead. Well, you can put a lot of pushback. It's your show.
Yeah, fair enough. But you're the expert. But like, have you ever held a nugget of gold?
Yeah. I panned for it one time in Walnut Creek in North Carolina. It was fucking amazing.
Okay, now
I think it was fool's gold though. Go ahead.
That's the thing. You might have some fake shit. But if you hold like this much gold, right? It was the weirdest thing I've ever experienced. I was doing some like news show, and one of those guys that were on the Gold Rush things, he was there, and he just had a nugget, like a raw nugget, and he handed it to me, and it was almost alien. The weight for size was the most peculiar thing I've ever held. I've never held anything like that in my entire life. So I could see how some like very primitive human being picked up the substance, and for whatever reason, it was so fucking dense and weird
and shiny
and odd that you would almost feel like it was, I don't know, from outer space or something. So I can see why we would ascribe value to it.
Yeah, so it's a psychological concept.
Exactly. And the same thing I imagine is at play here with Bitcoin, but it's playing into something else. It's not going, this is, I honestly think it's the opposite of gold in a way. I think this, I don't know what the fuck it is. Bitcoin, I do. There's proof of every single thing about it. So I
can
security.
Verify it.
It's the fucking San Antonio Spurs. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, this is good fundamental basketball. Yeah. I know what I can expect from it. Whereas gold was this like otherworldly substance that we put all this value on. But at the end of the day, what was it worth?
The whole idea of a narrative-driven value chain is when you pick it up, it's shiny, right? Like humans are stupid at the end of the day.
Yes.
I'm stupid, you're stupid, like we're all stupid, right? And so we pick up this shiny thing, we're like, oh shit, this thing must be valuable because it's shiny, right? And so what you end up seeing is that the world told us it's scarce. The world told us it had value. And so when somebody says, okay, well, how much gold is there? We have a pretty good guess, but like nobody knows for sure.
Yeah.
When the government says, hey, the dollar, we say, well, how many are there? Well, here's our best guess, right? Yeah. Nobody knows how much is created or taken away every day, all this stuff, right? And so everything in our life is a narrative. the media, right? If you look at all the institutions, like it's all narrative driven. And so what now has happened with digital technology is we say the narratives don't matter in terms of I'm not going to simply just blindly believe the narrative, right? Narratives around assets will always matter because that's investor psychology. But the narrative is an inferior way to prove value or to drive value than verifying.
Than trust.
And so it's not even trust.
Truth.
It's because it's truth. Exactly. And so I think that the whole thing that ends up becoming really interesting is what if I could tell you that every single time, right? Look at media. Look what you're doing. If you got interviewed by the mainstream media every day and they wrote articles about you, you'd be going nuts. You'd be like, that's not what I said, right? Or they twisted my words, or I didn't know they were going to write this, or whatever the complaint is, even if it was a positive piece, right? Now you just speak into that microphone and people hear exactly what you have to say.
Yeah.
And so it's going to the source. It's verifying. I don't care what somebody else says from this interview. What did he say in the interview?
We live in the age of verification, and blockchain technology is the confirmation of that.
The world is going to run on open, decentralized protocols that allow for complete verification of truth.
Of everything. Now, I believe in that entirely, 100%. I support that. Here's my question. What else is affected by it? Like, what industry gets destroyed? Do we need the stock market anymore? Do we need finance dudes? Like, I mean that sincerely. Like, are their jobs fucking done once we can verify every single trade and do it ourselves?
Go back in time, right before telephone.
One more thing. Let me ask. What if we can add a blockchain to the profits of a company? There's no more Enron. There's no more, right? Like, I'm trying to think what the 10, 20 year effects of this are. And you might get like a realistic look at all these different companies. I don't even think you need stockbrokers anymore.
So before we go to the future, let's go to the past.
Okay.
Go before phones, computers, cars, any of this shit. There was finance, companies, all this stuff. There are some companies that are still around today. If you go back and you look at, JP Morgan was a dude. And he was really rich, and now his company still persists.
Dude,
Goldman Sachs has been around for a long time, all this stuff, right? So some companies will navigate the invention of technology or innovation, right? So new technology comes along, they embrace it, they figure out how to use it, and they not only survive, they thrive in the new world. Other companies that may be their competitors get completely disrupted. So Sears is a great example. Internet comes along, like, see ya, right? They just got completely blindsided. And so it's not that everything goes away and it's this like super binary world. There's actually like this gray area. But what's going to happen is the people who embrace the technology will thrive. So the bankers who say, yo, I'm just going to figure out like what's my role in this new world, because by the way, out of the 10 services I offered, 8 of them now are obsolete. These other 2 I'm going to double down on, and now there's the creation of 2 more. So ultimately what ends up happening is think of a company. It's just the flow of resources and the organization of resources.
Pomp. I went on, sorry to interrupt. I went on Joe Rogan's podcast a few years ago. And I feel like we're having the conversation about the financial markets that I had with him about television and stand-up, where I was like, it's over. Like, TV's dead. Like, there is no more TV. And I leaned all the way into social media. I leaned into the streaming. I leaned into YouTube, obviously Instagram. And I was, not only was I sure it was going to win, I couldn't fathom how anybody could think anything else could win. I couldn't fathom.
Bitcoin is YouTube.
Exactly. Bitcoin is YouTube. It's just a more efficient way of getting content to people. This is a more efficient way of making these transactions. Maybe not more efficient in terms of every day, but whatever. We'll work towards that, right? So I'm sitting here with you, and I'm still having trouble getting all on board, but I do recognize maybe what people might have felt like in that instance. So this is the undeniable future. Which form it takes, we're not sure. Your hedge is on Bitcoin, right? It could be Bitcoin, it could be Ethereum, it could be some other one that blows them all out of the fucking water. But without a doubt, markets are going to change because of this new technology.
It's a foregone conclusion because ultimately where we're headed is an automated world.